in November the 17th.
Mm-hmm.
We are at within the process of where we've been going. We were doing all the floors, we were adding moldings, we were completely gutting a bathroom and a dressing room. There was a lot of prepare work that had to be done, which has been done, and now we're on the final stretches again.
And so just so you know, we did not plan to both be wearing leopard. Jan left the house this morning. I didn't even see her. Okay, but here's what happened. So the other day, Jan was talking about the finishing carpenters that we had hired to install all the molding. So there is 1,200 lineal feet of molding, and she interviewed 3 of them, group, that they were a team. So Jan, tell the story, because I said to her, well, and she said, these guys, they're like, it's like watching an orchestra. They are amazing. Yeah. And the amount of molding that they installed in one day was amazing. And they're going to be here for 3 days. They're going to get it all done. So, Jan,
yes,
tell the story of how you interviewed them. I said, what did you ask? Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
So we had 3 different one. The first one was an individual. So he had years of experience. I told him how many board feet I needed to have installed, or lineal feet I needed to have installed, and I told him what my time frame was. And he said, well, I could give you a day this week, and I can probably give you 2 days next week. I said, sorry, that's not going to work. I said, we are on a big deadline. Nice guy, really liked him, obviously incredibly knowledgeable, clean cut, all the things I'm looking for, you know, the non-smoker, the non-swearer, those kind of guys.
Yeah.
And, but at the end of the interview, he said to me, so I'll have 2 of my guys come next Monday. And I said, excuse me? He said, well, yeah, I own the company. It out. Oh, no, I said, I'm sorry. That's not going to work for us either. Because 2 reasons. One, I automatically know that if he's charging his guys out at $95 an hour, it's because he's paying them $75 an hour and he's pocketing the other 20. So I don't want to be subcontracting somebody. So I said, sorry, thank you very much for coming out. Really appreciate it, yada, yada. Together, their names were Fred and Chris. Walked in, it was obvious that they, just watching them banter about the project. So the kind of questions that I asked them was, where did you get your training as a finishing carpenter? How long have you been doing finishing carpentry? What kind of time frame are you looking at? What is your price, obviously? Can I see some referrals and recommendations and on your website, et cetera, et cetera? Well, they provided everything. It was just amazing how much information they were able to give me. So I said, it's a go. And I called Maria and I said, we've got 2 guys. I'm really excited. They're going to start tomorrow. Well, we have a general handyman kind of person. He called himself a carpenter as well, but he was generally a handyman. And he really wanted to do the finishing carpentry. But it was obvious to me by the tools he had, the conversations that I had with him, that this was going to be a stretch for him. So when the finishing carpenters arrived that day and they did a grid wall, within hours they had a 8-foot by 12-foot grid wall completed. Because you've been following Maria, you know what the grid wall is like. It's the one that's in her studio that we did a few years ago, right? We had a guy come in and do that grid wall, and that grid wall took him 4 days. This grid wall, one guy, took him...
Well, 2 guys.
2 guys.
2 guys, yeah.
3 hours.
3 hours.
And it was done.
Amazing.
And they're to show to you guys in the future. So that's how I went about hiring the finishing carpenters.
Sorry to interrupt. I'm going to take your going in and out with bad Wi-Fi. Are we
Oh,
back?
okay, good. Okay, good. We took the Wi-Fi off so that it's not going to cut out. Okay, good.
Yeah, the Wi-Fi should be fixed.
We should be okay. We're on data now, so sorry about that.
No,
Yeah.
that's good.
Thank you.
So part of the conversation we're going to have today is, how do you hire trades? What are the kind of questions you ask trades? Who are you looking for? So my number 1 recommendation always is a referral. if you have a friend or somebody that you know that has hired a trade and they've been happy with them, that is going to be your best recommendation. But if you don't have that and you're starting from scratch, some of the questions that you're going to want to ask your people are things like, what is your experience? How many years have you been doing this particular job? Depending on the project and where you're located in the world, permits, licenses, that kind of thing can be a major issue for you. Certainly in the world of finishing carpentry, you don't need that. But if you're doing construction, if you're taking walls out, that kind of thing, and you just want to make sure that they have a relationship already set up with wherever your city is with the planning and the permit department. Because in the location where Maria works, if indeed we were needing to have permits, we could be waiting 3 to 4 months before we would actually get a permit to do any particular construction job. And because Maria took possession on the 12th of October and wants to move in on the 15th of December, you can imagine what I'm up against. Right.
We forgot to talk about your experience, Jen.
Oh, my experience.
How you got to this place right now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we got to put that in.
About 40 years ago, I was working as a designer for a client in a location in British Columbia called West Vancouver. And it was, like I said, it was about 37 years ago. And it was a project that was a renovation. It was about $1.5 million at that time. And over the couple of weeks that I was working with the homeowner's wife, doing choosing, selecting, making decisions, etc., her husband observed me with some of the crew. And he was becoming very disenchanted with his general contractor. And he said to me, Jan, why don't you become my general contractor? I said, Otto, I've never done that before. I'm not sure. He said, I've listened to you for the last 3 weeks, Jan. He said, whatever you've been doing on job sites, you know. And if you don't know, you just find out. I said, okay. So
Right, because he said you were telling him what to do.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I decided to take it on and discovered that I just loved it. I loved working with the trades. I liked the creativity. I loved the fact that every project was different. I was always learning something new. So I set up my company and started from there. And I've been doing it ever since.
Awesome.
So
Somebody had asked a question, actually, which I think is a good place to put that in right now. She said, what happens when you have a contractor that talks down to you? What do you do? Do you put up with it? What do you do, Jen?
So it's unfortunately a problem that because of the fact that in most situations, the homeowner and his wife basically say, okay, dear, you look after the project. I'm going to work, kind of thing. So you're a lady, you're dealing with trades, you're dealing with contractors, and their assumption is that you know nothing. Okay, that's the assumption. So when they talk down to you, my perspective would be, get rid of them. Like, you can't change somebody's attitude. You can't change who they are in relation to the equality of men and women, job sites, et cetera, et cetera.
And it's not going to get better.
And it's not going to get better. And you're going to become increasingly frustrated. And so, yeah, that would be my suggestion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Before you answer my questions, can you circle back to hiring for Maria? Because it was so in and out with Wi-Fi, everyone missed it. So just retell that story.
Oh, we got to retell the story of how we found the 2 finishing carpenters.
Oh,
okay.
really?
Yeah, okay. So we'll start again. So what happened was these 2 finishing carpenters came and they were like a symphony. And Jen said, well, I interviewed 3 of them. And I said, well, what kinds of questions did you ask? Like, how did you decide which one was the right one? And so then she interviewed 3.
Yeah.
First one.
So the first one was only available on a sporadic basis, which obviously for any project does not work, no matter how competent they are. And in actual fact, I got the names of the first 2 companies from the supplier who supplied all of the boards, all of the baseboard, everything. They were highly recommended. They worked with them before, et cetera, et cetera. So the first one got dished because of his
Yeah, he
inability
said,
to commit.
I can come maybe once this week,
Yeah,
maybe next week,
2 days,
Tuesday or Thursday.
maybe.
And
Yeah,
Jan was
yeah.
like, no.
That's not working. And then the second guy came, and this is a really important one, I think, in relation to all trades. And that is that you don't want to hire somebody to do the job that is subcontracting it out. So in other words, the second gentleman that came owned a large finishing company that he employs numbers of finishing carpenters. So he will take a premium. He will take a percentage. So in other words, if you can hire a finishing carpenter, like we landed up at $70 an hour, but he was paying his guys $75, but then he was charging us $95. So in other words, he was pocketing that $20 every hour on the hour for the whole length of the project. So I generally speaking try not to hire that kind of a company. Mm-hmm. And then the third one, they came. They were a referral as well. And they were two guys, like Maria said, Chris and Fred. I think Maria is probably going to do a little video down the road for you to see them at work. And they truly were. It was like I was watching a cellist and a violinist work together. I mean, they were in tandem. They didn't have to ask questions. They just knew what the next thing to do was. Mm-hmm. And they walked around the project and said, yeah, we could do this and this and this. And then I'm not sure if this part came through before, but we did a grid wall in Maria's studio, which I know you're all familiar with. And that grid wall took a fellow over a week to get done, one person. They came in and did virtually the same size grid wall in less than 3 hours.
Two guys.
And
they're charging $70 an hour.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
it's amazing when you get the right labor, when you get the right trade for a particular job, you're just so happy. It brings you joy.
Yeah.
It brings you joy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And when you're working on a tight time frame, it's even more important that you get people that show up when they say they're going to show up. One of the questions we had is, what do you do when somebody says they're going to show up and they don't? Well, in the world of 3 times you're out, I never give them 3 chances. If you don't show up once, you're gone. So that's the way I work.
And so in advance, you then set up the expectations by
Yes.
saying...
Yes. I set it up and say, this is the number of days. This is the times that I need. Are you able to accommodate us? And if they say yes and they show up, I mean, these guys were here last week. They were worked from 9 o'clock until 3 o'clock, and they got a tremendous amount of work done. And they had said to me, when do you want us back? When do you want us back? And I said, well, it'll work best for me if you can start Thursday morning at 9 o'clock. And they were here this morning at 9 o'clock.
And what did they do in between?
They have their projects. So they were on a project.
You said Kelowna.
Yeah, it's a town. It's a small town not too far from here, about 4.5 hours. So they whipped up there Sunday night and worked Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and came back last night.
They said they were doing how many houses?
5 townhouses they were going to be doing in those 3 days.
In 3 days.
5. All the baseboards, all the casings.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they were definitely not as extensive as what we're doing here.
No.
They were pretty basic, but even so, a contractor all the way out 450 miles away said, yeah, you're the guys for the job.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So one of the questions that just came through is, what would you have done if the third company was as bad as the first 2? Sounds like you got very lucky. I don't perceive it that way. I guess it could be. But I just would have kept interviewing people if that had been the case, because I knew that I needed people to work for a particular period of time. And that's what I was going for. So, like I said before, calling a company like your finishing wood supplier to get referrals is an excellent place to start, because they work with these guys every day. Yeah.
Just like often you might call a paint store to get a painter reference.
Yes, exactly. The same kind of idea.
Yeah.
So references can be important. Time frames are important. One of the questions that I like to ask people, and again, this really depends on what their response is do you work on multiple projects at one time? Now, this is not such a big deal if you are looking for a general trade. But if you're looking for a contractor and they work on multiple projects at a time, which is the way it usually is, basically what happens is the way I work is I take a project and I live in that project. I'm there every day. So I'm not cheap, but I'm great. Okay.
And there's no rework being done.
There's no rework.
Because she's here walking around,
yeah.
making sure everyone's doing their job.
Yeah.
And in fact, she's got the schedule in her head, the whole picture in her head of what needs to happen. Yeah. So when she does need to leave, she'll let the trade know, this is what I expect you to have accomplished by the time I come back.
Yeah, exactly.
Giddy up, kids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the other piece about that is that many contractors and many subcontractors, whether you're tile guys, you're flooring guys, whatever, they'll come onto a job, they'll work for 2 or 3 hours, they'll come up against a problem. The contractor isn't on site. They can't locate him. They can't get him back. So they walk. So you've lost a half a day.
Or even worse, they just try to figure it out on their own.
And make a mistake.
Yeah. And do something they totally shouldn't have been doing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And some of the other pieces are, do you purchase the products and have your trades do the installation, or do you leave it up to them? Now, every contractor is different. I pass on all my wholesale prices to my client. So in other words, if this work would cost me $1,000, it costs her $1,000. If she was to buy it retail, it would be 20% more. So that $200, etc. Yeah.
So. Terrence wants to know if he can hire you in Arizona.
Well, when it gets a little cooler, maybe I was planning to come down to Arizona to see my sister-in-law. And,
there you go.
Yeah.
That's right.
Do you live in Phoenix?
Terrence does live in Phoenix.
Oh, so does my sister-in-law. Well, we need to talk.
Or wait, Scottsdale.
Yeah, no. That's
close enough.
She lives in Scottsdale as well.
That's right. Terrence. Okay, what other questions do we have?
So, starting a reno in my condo soon, how many quotes should I get?
So she wants to know how many quotes she should get because she's starting a renovation in her condo.
So it really depends on how extensive your quote is going to be, and if you want a project quote or whether or not you want individual quotes. So in other words, if you want to hire a contractor and you say to him or her, I want my kitchens redone, I want the bathrooms redone, I want it all painted, I want new casings, everything, and you say to the contractor, how much will it be? And they basically say, well, give me a day or two, and they do a price point. They come back and say, oh, I can do it for $250,000. So either you can afford that or you can't. So if you can't afford it, if it's more than what you want, you basically say to him, so what kind of a kitchen did you price point me out at? Or what kind of flooring? Or like, we haven't discussed anything. Like, how did you give me that price? Right. You didn't even know what I was going to choose.
Right.
So I would prefer to hire somebody who basically worked on a percentage basis. That's usually what it would happen, especially in a smaller project.
Like cost plus.
Like cost plus. Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Your contractor will still give you a quote for their time based on the number of weeks or months, whatever he thinks it's going to take. But yeah, cost plus would be your best bet.
Okay.
What is the best way to handle a change order?
I'm not really sure exactly what you're referring to with a change order. I'll make an assumption here that you have decided that you wanted a particular thing and then you changed your mind.
Or you want to add to the job.
If you add to the job, that's a different situation. That's a different situation. Oh, if you want to change your mind about something that has already been selected, you get to eat it. You just get to eat it. It's a little bit like Maria said the other day. She was talking to a client and they said, we bought 5 tiles and one of them is just awful, but we've already paid for them and everything. And Maria said, no. Don't let that one mistake change everything in your project. Eat that $300 that you paid or $400.
Especially because it's 3 to 4 times more expensive to install the tile
than it is to buy the tile.
So do not hang on to that color mistake because it's going to cost you more to put it in.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And by the way, somebody has just asked again, and this is being recorded, so you will be able to re-listen to it.
Yeah. All
They
right.
can't hear me over here, so I'm just so you don't have to repeat me.
Oh, okay.
Jenna's just reviewing the questions
What else
and
was
giving
it?
us.
Do you have to worry about workers' comp?
Yes. So again, it depends on the size of the project. I, generally speaking, want always to hire people who are licensed, who have their own workman's compensation, and are part of that. And it's different in every jurisdiction, but licensing is not such a big deal with things like finishing carpentry, but electricians and plumbers, people that are actually doing that kind of work, they should all have a license. And they will have a license if they're doing this kind of work. Mm-hmm. If they don't, if it's a handyman doing electrical work, he won't. So you bear the brunt if anything happens. Whereas if they come in and they fall off a ladder and they have workman's compensation, they will be covered.
But Jan she also sets a schedule. So the other day, right, we have a big cabinet that needs to move from our garage into this garage. And we were talking about when we're talking about doing it. So I'm in this conversation like, okay, we need to move it. And when are we going to do that? And then Jan just said, it's happening Thursday, kids. Okay. So have it unloaded. All right. And then I will send Sean over there on Thursday to take down the cabinet and install it over here. And I was like, oh yeah, it's happening Thursday. I'm like, because you don't really know when you're not a project manager that you must have a schedule. Jan was at it was 5:00 at night, and she noticed that the guys are coming the next day to upstairs to start sanding. Well, she then starts to fold up and clean up all the paper that was still on the floor, because she's like, okay, this needs to be done, right? So
yes, I am a working contractor.
She's a working contractor. Yes.
Somebody just asked the question about your homeowner's insurance in relation to your renovation. Again, it really depends on the scope of your renovation and how much you're doing. If you are doing plumbing work, if you're doing electrical work, changing, the amount of electrical, things like that. In British Columbia, yes, we would need to have a permit to do that. And we would need to then inform your insurance company that you are going to be doing a renovation.
So Jan was my mentor. We've known each other 20 years. Mm-hmm. I met Jan at a design event, and we started chatting. And Jan said, I am looking for some help on some colors. I'm working on a really big house and I'm having trouble with the colors, because I was there, with my big samples. So I then show up and I said, and then we really hit it off. And so Jan became my mentor, and I learned so many amazing things from Jan. One of the things that I use all the time that I use from Jan is just, we're because people say, well, what happens if one area of your house is dated and you're renovating another area of your house? Well, you're moving forward. There's just so many different things. Yesterday and today, I learned that from Jan as well, right? That you always want to be looking at every project that, if you're adding new to the old, that you want to make sure you're not creating this, old tile, new countertop, or vice versa. Old tile, new countertop, right? You want to make sure that you're not throwing in something new and trendy. So now it makes your bathroom, your kitchen look really old and dated because you've just thrown in something trendy. So so many things like that I have learned from Jan. Yes.
Okay.
What else?
How do you know that the price quoted for the work is fair?
Oh, that's a good
if
question.
You've never done it before, a bathroom reno, for example.
Yeah.
How do you know if a quote is fair? You need to hire Jan.
Yeah,
to let you know.
Well, it's not an easy. There's not an easy answer to that. Let me say that, because it depends on so many specific aspects about what it is that you're going to be doing. So, yeah, it's really, really tough. You could choose a tile for your bathroom that was $30 a square foot. And you could find a tile that is $1.99 a square foot. So I wouldn't be able to come in and give you a price of what your bathroom was until I knew everything that had been selected. So you know the same thing. You can buy a sink for $129, but you can buy a sink for $700. So it really depends on the price point of your renovation, whether you're doing it for resale, whether you're doing it to live in it for the next 25 years. It really does depend, and it's not easy to evaluate it. The only way you can do it is by having 2 to 3 different people come out. If you've already selected everything, then you can give it all to them. That's what I do for my clients. That's the way I create it. Yeah.
Do you create a timeline and have meetings with the team to keep all apprised of schedule changes?
Yes. Basically, in the morning when I come to the project at 8 o'clock in the morning, I go around and I basically see who is here that particular day. I will have known who's coming. And if there's overlap, if I need to have my on-site carpenter do something because the tile guy needs something done, or I need my hardwood floor guy that he needs something done, then I coordinate all of that between them. Yeah. Yes, I am.
Jan's a licensed contractor,
Yeah.
yes. How do we price hiring a designer like Jan?
Oh, there's a follow-up question to that. Well, same question. How are project managers paid? Is it a percentage, a flat fee, hourly, or your
All
choice?
3.
Yeah.
All 3. I prefer to do it on a percentage basis.
So like cost plus?
Cost plus. So,
Like
if a project
How
is...
much?
So I'm more expensive than most. I'll be very upfront. Most general contractors or project managers are a cost plus 10%. That's basically what it is. Or they'll look at it and they'll say, okay, this is a month of work. I need $22,000, something of that nature. I prefer to do it for myself. I prefer to do it on a cost plus, but I do charge, again, more. I charge 20% because not only does a client get me as a project manager, I also work with them as a designer, which is what I am. So I work with them on the selections of all their hard surfaces. I design kitchens. I design bathrooms. I work with millwork people. They and I speak the same language, which is one of the reasons, one of the things that Maria has experienced is, is your millworker actually living inside your head? He seemed to know. But that's the kind of rapport that you design or you want to have I want to have with my people, with my tile guys, with my hardwood floor guys. And some of these guys that are on Maria's site, my tile guy company, the
hardwood floor finishers,
the tile installers, the cabinet makers. I've worked with these people. Well, the hardwood floor guys, I've worked with them for 20 years. So
they know what she wants.
They know what I want.
She knows the quality that they produce.
Yeah, and I'm a stickler for detail. Like, I'm all about the details. So if somebody doesn't get it, they're off the job really fast. So a general contractor and a project manager, basically we're the same thing. It's just, in our world today, project manager, this is a really silly thing, but it's kind of it's an ego thing. A project manager sounds a little more sophisticated maybe than a general contractor, but we're basically the same thing. But some project managers are like me, and that is they are a combination of a designer and a project manager.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
How do you know if your project is large enough to get permits?
Oh, if it's anything structural, for example, so if you're taking a wall out and a new beam has to be put in because the wall is going to be taken out, that is something that needs a permit. When you're doing smaller projects, for example, like condos, your electrician and your plumber can get something called a day permit. So you don't actually have to have a construction permit to change those things. They get a day permit. They go to City Hall, they get a day permit, they come in, they do it. Somebody comes out and does the inspection, you get your paper, and then you finish the project. Yeah.
Okay.
I think we've already answered that one.
Is there anything else on your list that you wrote down?
Somebody asked what a project specialist is. I'm not sure in relation to what that is, but you definitely want to hire people as Maria's wife said to me, Jan, all I want on the job is professionals. I don't want anybody that's like does it once a month or does it. I want somebody that is their job. So they are specialists in their field. One of the things you might be kind of interested in is the fact that a lot of these trades, particularly people like finishing carpenters, they can be a little bit of prima donnas. They can. They, they're artists. They're artists in their own right. And they love respect. They love respect, as we all do. As a woman working in the construction business, at the age that I am, I have no problems with it. At the very beginning, when I was doing this work, when I was in my 30s, definitely there was a skepticism around who I was in relation to what I was doing. But we had a very good example of that the other day. We are putting in 4 brand new windows into Maria's house. And the guy came out to do the site measure. And when he arrived, it was obvious that he was almost offended that it was me. That, well, could I talk to him? And I said, no, actually, he's my handyman. I said, you don't need to deal with me. So we started walking around, and about 15 minutes into the site measure, he looked at me and he said, so how long have you been doing this? I said, I don't know, around 40 years. Oh, he said, I can tell. So one of the ways that you create that kind of rapport with your people is once they understand who you are and they respect what your knowledge is, it really does make things go much more smoothly. Yeah.
Okay. What kind of warranty is reasonable to ask of a construction professional?
It depends on the work. Most people will give somewhere between 3 to 5 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we've had a couple questions of an explanation asking what does cost plus mean?
Oh, okay. So what cost plus means, and again, that plus is going to depend on the person that you're hiring. But if we had $2,000 worth of lineal board come into the project, basically that would be $400 to me. So 20%.
Yeah.
Okay. Looking to buy a new to me home, bath, kitchens, total redo. Do you recommend hiring a general contractor or project manager designer?
If you can find a project manager designer, that is what I would recommend. But if not, then you'll have to go with a general contractor for sure. But because there are not that many of them around, project managers who are designers.
Yeah, I have my own question to follow up with that. How do you determine, if they are a designer, project manager?
Well, basically, you have to ask them for either. You have to ask them whether or not. And I'm not good at this, so don't ask me this question. Do you have a website? Maria has been bothering me for 25 years or whatever it is.
Yeah, Jan.
To take pictures of my projects. I'm really bad at that. I have a little bit, but I don't have a lot. I don't even have a really significant website that people can go to. Because I can tell you that of all the jobs that I've done over the last 35 plus years, I've only taken 2 that weren't from a referral.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's right.
So
she arrives on the street and suddenly everyone else on the street, the friends go, well, hey,
I mean,
maybe
generally
you could
speaking,
come to my house as well.
Yeah. A friend comes to my client's house. They look at what's been done and they go, oh, wow, this really came together well. Who helped you on this? And so that's how I get my referrals.
Yeah.
That's basically how it has happened for me.
Okay. What is the order of services and trades on a job like Maria's doing? A basement so uncertain. I don't really understand that.
The order of trades, when they should show up.
Yeah, I guess,
I have no idea.
The first person...
But luckily she does.
The first trade you will have, and they're not really a trade, but you do need to have somebody that's competent, is the demo. So... there are companies, I'm sure they are in your neck of the world as well as we have here. We have actually building demo trades. People that know how to disassemble places, take drywall off. They know where and how to get rid of all of this kind of stuff. Generally speaking, what I do before my demo crew arrives is I have my electrician and my plumber arrive on site, and they disconnect anything that might be either difficult for the demo people, or they might not want to touch anything electrical, that kind of thing. So if they're taking a wall apart and there are wires running through it, they can take the drywall off. The electrician comes in the next day, taps it all off, and then they can continue. So your demo crew can't just be a couple of guys down the road. They need to know what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, I think that's good. I think we should wrap
yeah.
up. So Jan and I are going to do this for the next 3 Thursdays at 11 a.m. So what we would love is your suggestions on the topics that we should discuss.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the project will still be going, so we will do this again. So
It was lovely to meet you all.
yes,
And look forward to seeing you again.
we'll see you next Thursday.
Thanks.
Okay.
Now, I want